Good morning. Good morning. Great to be back in Southwest Florida. Thank you all for coming out. We're excited about today's bill signing, and we're going to hear from a lot of great folks about some of the things we're doing. I think most of you have seen some of the dignitaries that are here with us. You have your senator and our Senate President, Kathleen Passidomo, is here. We have Speaker of the Florida House, Paul Renner. The bill sponsors in the House, Representative Busada Cabrera and Senator Catalayud from Miami is here, so thank you both for being. Then you'll hear from Michael Naples, Executive Director of Florida Housing Finance Corp., Detective Frank Jones with Collier County Sheriff's Office, Brigadier General Chip Deal, U.S. Air Force Chairman of the Florida Defense Support Task Force, Ryan Carter, President of Scotland USA Division, and Mike McGraw, President of the Florida Realtors and a licensed realtor in Central Florida. Most people know that Florida has boomed over the last few years, particularly since I've been governor. If you look at our unemployment rate, it's a full percentage point lower than the nation's rate as a whole. And if you look at all the large states, Florida has had by far the strongest GDP growth over the last 4 years. If you look at the number of people that are employed in Florida today, it is more than the number of people that were employed pre-COVID. And that is not the case with a lot of these other states, particularly the lockdown states. So not only do we have more people employed, we have significantly more people employed, and our labor force is actually growing when that's not true in every part of the country. And so we did 2.3% growth in our labor force over the past year, which is good. Of course, many people in Southwest Florida don't need me to tell you this, but Florida is #1 in net in-migration. I think you see that every day with the people that are coming down. We're the nation's fastest growing state, and that's the first time Florida has been the fastest growing state in America since, I think, 1957. And if you think about it, when you're big, when we have over 22 million, it's hard to be fastest growing once you already are a big size, and yet we are. So I think that's saying something. If you look at a lot of the individual localities, we have 7 of the 10 fastest growing localities according to U.S. News and World Report, including places in Southwest Florida. We are, of course, fiscally in very, very good shape. We're going to be working with the legislature over the next few weeks on the budget, but every time they do budget estimates, they always revise up the amount of surplus that we're bringing in every month, and that's with us cutting taxes. So we ended last year with the largest budget surplus in Florida history. This year, we're going to do over $2 billion in tax relief, which will be by far the largest in Florida history. We're going to end up doing, so we'll end up having another big surplus, but we're going to end up doing some infrastructure, because we have an infrastructure plan that we fund, and we have the record funding last year and this current fiscal year, which is great, but we've got different spots that need acceleration due to the growth, and so we're going to do a big moonshot there, and we're going to be able to accelerate projects in every corner of the state. We'll end up completing things 10, 12 years ahead of schedule if we're able to do this, and so I think that that's important, and we're going to do that. Florida ranks, I think, #2 in the country for lowest state per capita tax burden, and we're #2 in the country for lowest per capita debt burden. Our debt, our economy in Florida is over $1 trillion. Our debt's about $20 billion. So compare that debt to GDP ratio to the federal government's debt to GDP ratio, and much different story there. But even though we're second lowest in debt per capita ratio, we're working with the legislature to create a program where we can actually accelerate retiring the debt. And so you're going to have, I think you're going to have a fund that's going to be dedicated to doing that and paying it down even quicker. You know, having some debt actually is not not a bad thing, because there's certain things, particularly when the rates were a lot lower, you could do projects that you have to do anyways, most likely, and you could do it, and it makes financial sense. But at the same time, you look at some of these other states with all these unfunded liabilities, massive debt. We don't want to be like in Illinois. We don't want to be like some of these places. And even though we have a big surplus, Texas, a lot of these other red states, you know, California, they've got like a $30 billion deficit hole in their budget that they're having to fill. So we don't want to do that. So in terms of the fundamentals, low tax environment, good budget, big surplus, a lot of economic growth. Florida, we've consistently gotten it right. At the same time, we look over the last few years, and the federal government and some of these other federal entities have consistently gotten it wrong. If you look at what they've done with the Congress, they've put trillions and trillions of dollars of fiscal stimulus into the economy that was way beyond what was appropriate, and that has sparked big inflation throughout our country. You also have the Federal Reserve. They put rates to zero. They started printing all this money. I mean, they've printed trillions and trillions of dollars, so they're printing money. That obviously is going to create inflationary pressures. And so people were saying that this was what was going to happen. They didn't want to listen. And so you had inflation start to percolate. And what they said was, well, it's transitory. Don't worry about it. And so inflation started getting worse and worse. They got behind the ball. So then what does the Fed do, Jerome Powell? They start hiking rates very rapidly, and that's causing dislocations in the banking sector. It's causing individuals to suffer just because they took their eye off the ball and didn't know what they were doing. And, you know, I think the Fed has done a horrible job, you know, over these last few years, and they really are creating potential significant turmoil in the economy going forward. I mean, think about what they did. For all of 2022, they were hiking rates, taking money out of the economy because there was too much money that had been printed. And so they're doing that, and that obviously causes problems because they didn't do it, they didn't handle it appropriately. But then what have they done in like the last month? They're bailing out banks like Silicon Valley Bank. And so they took money out of the economy, and they've already printed more money just in the last week or in the last couple weeks. So all that they did for last year and all the problems that caused, they've already erased half of the money that they took out by printing more money. And I can tell you, you know, the Silicon Valley Bank, these were people that were very connected to a lot of the policymakers in Washington. I can tell you, if this was some bank in the Midwest that serviced farmers, they would never have bailed it out. That's just not what would have happened. And so they're creating, I think, a lot of perverse incentives. And here's the thing. You can't just do policies like we've seen over the past few years and think that somehow nobody's going to have to pay the piper. Somebody's going to have to pay the piper. You can't just print money out of thin air like they did and expect that it's all going to be hunky-dory. And so they're finding that out now. There's been a lot of fiscal and monetary mismanagement. But the reality is that the people who, in these banks that are getting the bailouts, they're basically being protected from some of the policy choices they made, some of the policy choices the Fed are making. The average American, though, is not getting any type of protection on that. I mean, you're now looking at, if you want to purchase a home and look at the interest rates compared to what they were 2 or 3 years ago, you're talking about way, way more expensive to be able to do that. That's a big, big problem. So one of the things that we wanted to work on in Florida, and really Senator Pasadomo was the leader on this, is to say, okay, what can we do to be able to make an impact on people who are suffering under this Bidenflation? And some of the things we did on the tax we think are very good. I mean, we did a 50% reduction in tolls for our commuters for 2023. We're going to do things like eliminate sales tax on all baby items, so diapers, wipes, cribs, clothes, all that, to help families. and we're doing other things to make things a little bit more easy for people when you're having to deal with this. But one of the things that's been really tough for folks is the housing costs, because you're in a situation where inflation is driving everything up, period. But then when they're building new things, and we saw this in our budget in Florida, we would have projects in the budget in 2021 thinking that we funded something, and then the next year I come back and they're asking to put more money in for the same project. Wait a minute, we funded that. No, the costs have gone up 50, 60% in some cases, and so you're having to put more money in. So we've had to do that, and I think it's a lesson, because Biden, they've spent so much money, and they act like somehow we're benefiting. Oh, we have money for infrastructure, all this other stuff, but just keep in mind, most of the money that is being sloshed around is getting canceled out by the rising costs anyways. So if a project would have cost $100 million 3 years ago, and you give me $100 million, but it's now gone up significantly, how much are you really getting ahead at that point? And so we're seeing that over and over again, and that's part of the issue. And then now, of course, with the housing, with the interest rates, that has a huge problem for affordability as well. So being able to have folks who are teachers, police officers, firefighters, all these important things, you can't do it if they have to drive an hour and a half just to get to work every day. I mean, we want people to be able to live in the community where they're working. And so last year, we did a program called the Hometown Heroes program. And what it did was it provided down payment assistance for folks who are military veterans, first responders, nurses, teachers, and we've had a lot of them have been able to utilize that. I think that we haven't exhausted all the money that was in the budget last year so far this fiscal year, but we've done it at a very, very impressive clip, and so that's really, really been meaningful. That's just one small part of what needs to be done to be able to have more access for folks. And so today, we're going to be signing Senate Bill 102, titled the Live Local Act, to be able to help Floridians live in the communities where they work. So this bill includes $711 million for projects through the Florida Housing Finance Corporation, and this is the largest ever support for housing in state history. In fact, this almost doubles what the legislature did last year, which was already at a 15-year high. So some of the things that the bill does is there'll be $100 million for a second year of Hometown Heroes program for the down payment and closing cost assistance to hometown heroes wanting to purchase their first home. And as I mentioned, of the $100 million last year, the vast majority has been obligated. I think it's about $72 million. And I think that this has been something that's been very popular with military veterans, in particular, also very popular with police officers. The bill also dedicates $259 million for the state apartment incentive loan, the SAIL program, to provide financial assistance to be able to develop new housing. And $150 million of these funds are recurring for certain specified uses, such as the redevelopment of underused property and projects near military installations. When you're in the military, you go in, you get something called a BAH, Basic Allowance for Housing, and it's tax-free, so that's nice. The problem is that those BAH rates are set sometimes years in advance. They oftentimes are not keeping up with inflation, and so I think this will be helpful to provide more options for active duty service members. $252 million for the SHIP program, and this works with local governments to be able to create partnerships to produce more housing units in the state of Florida. And then finally, $100 million for Florida Housing and Finance Corp to implement a loan program to alleviate inflation-related cost increases for previously approved projects. And this is a huge, huge issue. Projects that were agreed to a couple years ago, the cost has just gone up dramatically, and sometimes you're in a situation where you got to hold these people accountable because the overruns are through mismanagement. In this situation, the reality is it's just much more expensive to get a lot of the materials than it was just a couple years ago, and so this program recognizes that and tries to help doing that. The bill also creates a $5,000 refund for sales tax on building materials for these workforce housing units when they're done through Florida Housing and Finance Corporation. And these will be things that people can use right now, which is really, really good. We also do more for the down payment assistance program for Hometown Heroes and even increase that. Also broaden FHFFC's ability to invest in housing for those in or aging out of foster care. Expands eligibility for the Governor's Job Growth Grant Fund to authorize public infrastructure projects that support housing development. As you know, you can have a parcel, you can build some apartments, but you need a road there or something like that, so we can be able to help that. So at the end of the day, you know, we're proud of what we've been able to accomplish in Florida. We think the quality of life here, here's all I know. When people come up to me and they say they moved from Illinois or from Michigan or New York or wherever, I always ask them, are you glad you did it? And I haven't met anyone yet who's not been glad that they did it. And so I think that that's... So I think that's a testament that it's a great quality of life here, particularly this time of year in Southwest Florida. You look around, I mean, I kind of feel like we have half of Wisconsin and Michigan here already. So it's just the nature of how it is. So we're proud of that. We're proud of the strength of our communities. I mean, we saw the response to Hurricane Ian. We saw what our first responders were doing. We saw everyone pull together. And these are folks that are instrumental for the health of our communities. And so we want to be able to have folks who are able to afford to live in those communities. And you know, the good thing about being a well-run state and being a desired location is that, you know, people vote with their feet, and you kind of get a vindication on those policies just by watching people's behavior. But, you know, as demand is high to move to a place like Florida, it sometimes makes it more challenging for folks to be able to afford. So this, I think, is the biggest effort that's ever been done in the history of Florida to be able to do. And Kathleen will probably talk about a little bit. You know, some of it is trying to get creative about how you're doing things. You know, for example, like you have different commercial areas. You know, there's nothing saying that you shouldn't be able to maybe have some apartments like on top of some of these businesses. They do that in different parts, and it's something that is an option to be able to do. So trying to utilize some of the commercial space and be able to have maybe a valve to have some housing supply. You know, there's some creative things in the legislation which I think will make a big difference. So we're proud of the free state of Florida. We're thankful that so many people have set their sights on being here and working here and raising families here, retiring here. It runs the gamut, and we're proud of that. We got to make sure that our infrastructure and our housing supply are able to sustain this growth. And here's the thing, I'm not even asking anybody to move. You know, you'll have some governors will beg people to move to their states. I don't do that. I'm just sitting here, we're just living the dream, doing what we do, but so I'm not even asking, but I also just have to recognize that it's a free country. Well, it's a free state here. I don't know about the country so much anymore. We've got some work there, but people are able to vote with their feet, and they're able to do that, and that is something that we need. We've always understood that and gotten ahead. I think it's been very rapid, so that's why we're taking steps, and we look forward to signing this bill. We look forward to some of the infrastructure moonshots that we're going to be able to do, but we have a responsibility to understand that it's a big state, and that it's a great state, but we've got to be mindful of all the challenges. And so I want to thank the legislature. I want to thank Senator Pasadomo. This was her top priority to be able to do, and so now she can work on getting all our stuff across the finish line in the Senate, which she's done a great job of doing so far. So why don't we welcome Senator Pasadomo up to be able to say a few things.
I just said to him, "You're on a roll, aren't you?" Well, welcome to Southwest Florida. You know, I don't have to welcome the governor because I think he spends more time here than he does in Tallahassee. Has been right. I think if he could, he would single-handedly build the Sanibel Bridge by himself. And I want to thank my colleague and partner in the House, Speaker Renner, who has been a joy to work with, and we've got some amazing things that we're doing this session. And our two bill sponsors, Representatives Demi Busada Cabrera and Alexis Claudiud, who worked so hard to get this bill across the finish line, although I was like behind there, do this, tell them what to do all the time. When I moved to Naples 43 years ago, the community was talking about the lack of housing for our workers. It was a problem then, and it's a problem today in not just Southwest Florida, but the entire state of Florida. I've had so many conversations with the governor and the speaker about this bill that when they see me coming, they run. So once it's signed today, we can move on to other things. You know, as the governor said, the free state of Florida has attracted so many new people to move here, and that has just exacerbated the problem. And we don't have one solution to the problem, but the Live Local Act is an amazing, multifaceted, 106-page bill of ideas and suggestions on how we can provide affordable, safe housing for our workers. We have a new program called the Missing Middle. For the first time, we're offering owners of substantially renovated or recently constructed units the chance to qualify for a tax exemption when they turn market rate units into affordable rentals for our low and moderate income Floridians. We're fortunate that right next door is a wonderful project underway that will do just that. We have so many things in this bill. There's something for everybody. So that we believe that from day one, there will be a big impact on the lack of housing for our citizens. We want our residents to live close to where they work. Imagine being able to, you know, if you work at a hospital, walking to work. If you work at a bank, walking to work. Those people who have to drive an hour to an hour and a half to work, it's a tragedy. It's so hard on their families. We want everybody to live local, and I just am so thrilled that the governor and the speaker are in sync on this amazing product. Thank you. You guys have a great day. I wish I could stay, but I got to go back.
And I don't know if you said this, but it passed 40-0 in the Senate, right? Okay. All right, Speaker Paul Renner.
Well, it's great to be with you today, and you know, I really won the lottery to have Kathleen Pasadomo as my counterpart in the Senate, and this is her baby. She's worked so hard on this housing bill, and we would go around the state in our respective travels and say, what are the top 3 things we need to work on? And invariably it was workforce housing. You know, we got to have the ability to have our people not have to drive an hour and a half away. And she spent a large part of the summer building out this really transformative change, the best we've done in the state of Florida on housing. And you know, in Florida, we don't wait around to fix problems. We fix them immediately, and we've got a governor that does that, and you've got a Senate president who is all about fixing problems of real people and Floridians day in and day out. And so it's only the beginning. We're not even halfway done with session yet, so you're going to see more great things from the Florida legislature this year. But I just want to say how great it is and say another thank you to President Pasadomo for all your hard work on this. It's really going to change people's lives for the better, and that's what we always should be about, right? Politicians get carried away sometimes with ego and everything else, but this legislature, this governor, we're about solving real problems. And so we've done that here today. And I also want to commend Representative Busada Cabrera in the House for carrying this bill, as well as Senator Claudiud in the Senate for great work and your efforts in bringing this bill to fruition. So thank you guys very much, and thank you to Senator Pasadomo again for your great work.
All right, Michael DiNapoli, Executive Director, Florida Housing Finance.
Thank you, Governor. It's wonderful to be here. I just want to say quickly thank you to Governor DeSantis, Senate President Pasadomo, and of course, House Speaker Paul Rennert. This is an amazing bill. As we all know, during Governor DeSantis' administration, the state of Florida has become an even greater magnet for people all over the world seeking to live in a place that ensures freedom and opportunity. Once again, Governor DeSantis and the Florida legislature have chosen to lead this passage and enactment of SB 102, the Live Local Act. The legislature aims to provide affordable and attainable housing for all Floridians, and it is an honor, truly an honor, to lead the Florida Housing Finance Corporation alongside the governor and with our partners in the legislature during this historic moment. As we were coming down, I was speaking with Speaker Renner, and he had asked me the immediacy of some of the work that's going to be done. And of course, I just want to highlight the hometown heroes. I know we're going to hear from Frank Jones from the Collier County Sheriff's Office about him receiving a Hometown Heroes loan, down payment assistance. It's just amazing. We've got 262 participating banks. We've got 1,300 active loan officers within those banks working on the Hometown Heroes program. And there's 3,300 realtors, and I hear there's realtors here, so thank you so much. It starts with you, and it starts with advising your clients on this amazing down payment assistance with the Hometown Heroes. So thank you, Governor. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
Okay, Detective Frank Jones, Collier County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you, Governor. I'm glad to be here. My sheriff here from Collier County. I'm the one that came from Illinois. So, they brought me down from Illinois. I've been doing this job almost 36 years now, and I don't regret it all. Still. Yeah. But I'm glad I received this Hometown Hero loan to buy a new home. And this loan, the program is for frontline workers, which I take my hat off for you guys. It's a lot. Coming from Illinois, where they don't appreciate most places don't appreciate the police or law enforcement firefighters. Here, you guys love them. And I go to places and I see people, and people say thank you, and I'm looking around, thank you, what I do? And they just say thank you for your service. And that honestly, they bring water to my eye. And when I see they teach the little kids, the small ones, they saying the same thing. That's appreciated. And I appreciate you, Governor. And because of this program, I was able to purchase my home in the community that I serve, which is huge. Because now you see people all the time, not in their bad moments, you see them in their good moments too. So that's a lot. So that's all I want to say. And I want to thank the legislature, thank you guys, and thank you, Governor.
Okay, Brigadier General Chip Deal.
Thank you, Governor. And as always, I'm honored to fly your wing today and for always. Sir, you and I know, along with 1.5 million veterans that are here in Florida, along with thousands of active duty, I will add the National Guard and the Reserves and our Coast Guard. We know the pride we revere in serving our nation. And in fact, sir, my son comes back tomorrow. He's serving in the Air Force right now, and he comes back to Florida tomorrow. You know, in the military, we live the moves. We cherish the camaraderie. We endure the sacrifice. But I will also tell you here, we never look back. It is truly an honor for us. Now, as the governor has already mentioned, people are moving here from all over the country. Sir, the success that you mentioned on our economic front, the quality of life, our location. But here on behalf of our military, I would also like to add that it's the freedom that we enjoy in Florida due to you, Governor, our champion, that I just wanted to thank you. You know, in our military, we do move a lot. In my 30-year career, I moved 17 times. But we serve, and we value I'm here to tell you what we're talking about today. We value our homes. You know, education, health care, child care, which again, Governor, Madam President, Speaker, this state supports our military. And when you're talking about homes today, education, health care, child care is on the forefront of the legislatures and even the First Lady. But it's our home that I would just like to tell you is the capstone of a military family. While we deploy, it's back home, and knowing that comfort is what's important to us. The challenges today, though, are not only for us to afford a home, a place to call home, but it's also enjoying the right homes, which this bill helps do. We don't just need a home, we need 3 bedrooms, we need 4 bedrooms. I will also add to you, we need the right locations. In many of our installations, right, you go up, whether it's the Panhandle or you come to Tampa, there are people living 45 minutes to an hour away because that's the only place they can find that nest egg called a home. And that's stressful. I'm here to tell you it's stressful. But today, again, Florida shines brightly, and here's where I want to bring it to a conclusion. We're doing something about it. We're taking action. And that's where I want to, again, salute the governor, the legislature for doing this. Here's some of the highlights that I bring. You've already heard about them. The SAIL program, which stands for State Apartment Incentive Loans, providing quality housing developers the direct support they need for construction and more multi-family homes closer to our military installations. That's big for us. The Hometown Heroes program that you've heard, supporting the down payment and closing assistance. The governor mentioned BAH. BAH does not go up like the normal inflation. It is steady. It's usually a 10-year increment. It's steady. So again, the Hometown Heroes, those down payments, closing assistance, active duty veterans, again, I'm talking 1.5 million veterans, so that they can help in their moves to Florida. Foremost, my last point, these actions today, this legislation goes into effect when he signs that bill. That money he mentioned is going to be in the bank for us, all of us, in a couple weeks. Again, this is the action we're getting from the leadership. Governor, the legislation, your leadership, and now the aggressiveness of the legislature, as I mentioned, is a major leap forward in the arena called housing. As you have mentioned, it is a moonshot, for which we salute you, and from our hearts, all the military, I'd just like to say thank you. And for all of us, this is why Florida is the most pro-military state in the nation, and under this governor's leadership, it always will be. Thank you.
Well, thank you. You know, when you're, and I was a Florida resident, so it wasn't as big a deal, but when you get assigned on active duty to a Florida base, and as the general said, you get sent around the country. Usually every 18 to 36 months, you change your station. And the people that end up in one of our bases here, whether it's the Panhandle, Tampa, whatnot, they tend to keep that Florida residency. Even if they get sent to Washington State or Norfolk or wherever, and so they keep the Florida residency, and there's benefits for doing that, of course. And then many of them end up retiring in Florida. And so you look at something like Hometown Heroes, they're able to purchase a house potentially. They can do that as their homestead. And then even if they get sent in different directions throughout the country, they always have that Florida residency that they go back. Most of them vote in Florida and continue to do that. So it's a big deal, and I think it's something that is not lost on military members who, if you go to these other states, if they have been in Florida before, chances are a decent number of them are still Florida residents, and we're proud of that. Okay, Ryan Carter, come on up.
to thank you, Governor, for having me, and I have some great members of my team and my beautiful wife, Amy, here. So on March 29th, it's a very special day for myself and for Floridians. First, I want to say my company 13 years ago started on this day here in Southwest Florida. We're Scotland, we're a trucking, logistics, and freight brokerage company. We chose here for all the same reasons I think many of us are here. It's a wonderful place to live, awesome business climate, and I wouldn't change anything about that. So 13 years ago, I was 25 years old. I moved here like thousands of people are every single week from another state. Came down here in a U-Haul. I had my dog, and that was it. Didn't know much about living in Florida, but found it to be nice. I lived in Cape Coral. I found a place that was affordable, even though it was about a 25-minute commute from where I needed to be every day. We had a toll every day, which will be cut in half, so that's great. But I worked hard. I worked very hard, saved up money. I was able to buy a home in Fort Myers within probably 10 minutes of home. So that's a big deal. And so it's the same problem and same goal I think a lot of our employees face, where they want to, cut down that commute to work. I'm a proud parent of 3 boys. Time is more valuable than anything. I think it's our most valuable resource, and commuting is not a good use of that time. And so, with that, over the years we've hired hundreds of people. We have about 450 employees right now. Some of them commute 45 minutes up to an hour, and we hire a lot of folks that are right out of college, first-time career, and you don't have the luxury of living anywhere you want, and so the last 5 years that's become a major challenge, and so I'll get to that. And so this year we're looking to hire 200 people to service about $800 million in sales that we've been able to do this year here in Southwest Florida. And so the second reason today is special is because of this bill. The last 5 years have been very challenging on the hiring front. The number one, without a doubt, issue with hiring, in whether it's people from out of state, like in Illinois, New York, which we've hired a lot of these folks, is finding an affordable place to live. Without a doubt, it is the hardest thing, and it is usually the last deterrent from somebody even coming to work for us is, hey, I can't find a place to live. $2,500 a month for an apartment is not going to work for me. So with that being said, I think this day is very special. Senator Pasadomo, back in October, I don't know if you remember, you spoke to a Vistage group I'm in, and your passion for affordable housing was very evident then, and it's incredible to see how quickly we're taking action on that. So, I can't imagine doing business anywhere else. The last 5 years have been challenging. The last 2 or 3 years have been very challenging on the workplace or the workforce housing, and this bill I think is going to have an immediate impact on that. And the folks at Scotland are very thankful for this, and I'm sure many of us new and existing Floridians are as well. So thank you, Governor. Thank you, Speaker Renner. Thank you, President Pasadomo. I look forward to this, and I look forward to working with the state. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, and last but certainly not least, we have Mike McGraw, President of the Florida Realtors.
At more than 238,000 members strong, Florida Realtor serves as the voice of real estate and for private property rights in Florida. And we believe in home ownership. We're excited to be here today to help celebrate this historic moment for housing, a moment that would not be possible without the leadership of Governor DeSantis and his tireless efforts to make Florida the success that it is. The Live Local Act does so many amazing things. It expands eligibility requirements and invests more than an additional $100 million into Hometown Heroes. The housing program that as of January 30th has already helped 3,582 hardworking Floridians purchase their first home. It incentivizes builders and owners in a variety of ways to increase housing inventory throughout the entire state. and it invests more than $500 million into proven ship and sale programs that put Floridians in homes. Thank you, President Pasadomo, for the long hours you spent gathering feedback and creating this historic bill. Thank you. And thank you, Speaker Renner, for your support of this bill throughout the entire legislative process. And thank you, Governor DeSantis, for being a champion for housing, a champion for freedom, and since your very first day in office, a champion for the state of Florida. Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna get everybody up and do it. Okay, John Hancock is incoming on this. All right. What are you guys doing? Good to see you. Yeah, of course. All right. You want one of these pens for this?
Yes, I do. I can
Yeah,
fit
yeah,
one
yeah. Okay, that's right. All right. Who else we got coming up? All right. We got police, fire. Good. All right. So today is the 29th. We've done a lot. It's not even April yet on that. It's good. Gotta keep. All right. There you go. There you go. Anybody else? All right, there we go. We got it. Okay, good stuff. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. We're going this way. Of course, of course. Are we going? Do we have any questions?
Hi there, Governor. So how will this money impact an average family waiting on relief? What will that process look like, and how can we describe it to our viewers?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunities, and so you heard a lot about the Hometown Heroes. So for first-time home buyers, nurses, police officers, military members, veterans, all that, you're going to be able to get support for closing costs and down payment. The cap has actually gone up to now $35,000, and so that's a huge bridge to be able to afford, especially when you see with interest rates being higher. And then I think the other thing that it does very well is, there's really now good financial incentives to increase the supply of housing. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's supply and demand. The prices are going to go up when there's inflation, which has happened, but also when their demand exceeds supply. And so you now have incentives to bring more housing stock into the market. So if you're somebody that's in our workforce and you're working at a restaurant or you're working at a hospital or something, and you want to work somewhere close to where you live, not have to commute an hour, this is going to be able to incentivize more options. Now, some of this stuff you'll see because it applies immediately. Some of these tax incentives, there's existing projects that are going to be able to benefit from that, but it's also going to incentivize new projects. And so at the end of the day, consumers benefit when you have more options, and because of this, you are going to have more options. Yes?
I have a question, and thank you so much.
Are you,
for
you're not a
everything
reporter, though. You're
No, I'm
okay.
just
Go
a
ahead.
normal
Go ahead.
person. Okay. So
And you're from here?
yes, I live in Collier County.
Okay.
I have 3 children. 2 are in college. 1 is in grade school.
Okay.
And my concern would be for our youth, for our college-age kids. One of my children are at FGCU. And she's studying accounting, so it's not like she's a gender studies major or anything goofy where she's not going to get a job, right? So she gets a job in accounting, presumably in a year. So how do I keep her here but get her off my payroll? And, right? Because she loves it here and she wants to stay here and she's lived here for 8 years. But the pricing, especially in Collier County, is astronomical even for an apartment. Does this bill address those situations?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It does?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So,
so,
yeah,
they
yeah.
benefit from it as well?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
mean, you're looking at having more availability of things like apartments.
Okay.
So people that are just starting out, particularly people in their early to mid-20s, can work a job, and there are opportunities for jobs here, which is the good thing.
Yeah.
You know, the bad thing is that going to be affordable? And so you're now in a situation where you have much more incentives to provide for the market to deliver those types of units. You know, some of this stuff, it's if you look at kind of the inflation really hit housing across the country, even in parts of the country that have hemorrhaged residents, like San Francisco and these places. They still saw housing spike because, you know, they messed with the supply chain. There was a whole bunch of other stuff. The inflation and all that was reflected in that. But I think that for Florida, we had to deal with the inflation because of what the Fed was doing, what Congress was doing, and the Biden administration. But then we also just had really, and still have, intense demand. And so our demand, unlike a San Francisco where the demand went down because people are leaving, our demand is higher, people go up. So that just adds to the upward pressure as well. So I'd like to see them get inflation under control. That would help with housing and everything, of course. And it's not just housing costs when you look at costs of living. Think about how much more expensive groceries are today than they were just a few years ago. I mean, it's gone up dramatically. That impacts the ability of folks to be able to make ends meet. But at the end of the day, you need the supply to catch up with the demand. And I think this bill really helps push that forward. And it's important because you shouldn't have to move to another state or something just to be able to have a job and make it all work. We want you to be able to do that here in the state of Florida. And, you know, if you're in one of our state universities in particular, we're proud of the fact that we've not allowed tuition to increase since I've been governor, and even many years before that. So you're going, and as a Florida resident, you're talking about $6,000, $6,500, somewhere in there for tuition at these universities. You cannot find that anywhere else in the country. We have the most affordable public higher education in America by far. And the thing is we're delivering high quality. The University of Florida just recently got ranked, I think last year it hit number 5 in the country for public universities. So you have Berkeley, Michigan, UCLA, Virginia, and then Florida was number 5. We used to be like 20 to 25, 10, 20 years ago in terms of public universities. And so you see that, you've seen Florida State, you've seen USF, a lot of that has happened. So it isn't like we're skimping on quality. We've increased the quality, but said, you know what? People should not have to have their entire future mortgaged just to be able to get a degree. I mean, that didn't used to be the case many years ago, and it seems like in the last 30 years or so, it's become this cottage industry where these kids are supposed to take out all these loans. They end up $100,000 in debt. And look, if you're going to be an engineer from MIT, you're going to be able to handle that debt. That's not going to be an issue. But if you're doing zombie studies, well, guess what? You're not going to necessarily be in a great spot for that. So what we're doing is saying it needs to be affordable, and combined with Bright Futures, combine in-state tuition, all those things that we have available, you really don't need to go into debt at all. If you're a Florida resident, you can go and maybe you work a part-time job or something, but that's, honestly, I did that. That was good. It's good to be able to do that. So we're proud of that, and we think that that's got to be affordable. That helps our young people be able to start fresh and not have to worry about the crushing burden of these student loans. And I just think that these loans, what a lot of these universities have done, they haven't increased the quality of the education with all the loan money. They raise tuition, they get more money because they know the students will just have to take out more loans, and then they increase the administrative bloat of the universities. So you look in the last 30 years, the administration and these positions have increased dramatically. And what have they done to contribute to the quality of the education? Very little. And in fact, in many cases, they've made it worse. That's why we're doing things in Florida with the help of the legislature, like eliminating this DEI. We're just going to take it out because it's ideology. It's not treating people equally. It's imposing ideology, and we don't want to do that. Okay? All right. Thanks, everybody. God bless. We'll see you soon.
to any meeting or any gathering of 2 or more members of the board to discuss any matter that relates to district business. Whether that business is to come before the district or as a board action or not. So that would be a meeting. This clearly noticed, advertised meeting, and the discussions here are a meeting under the Sunshine Law, but that doesn't have to be the only time. And if you meet outside of this, that would constitute a meeting if you're talking or discussing any type of district-related business. The requirements for a meeting are 3 under Florida law. One is they must be open to the public. Those meetings, whether it's 2 or more, including this meeting, there must be reasonable notice provided for that meeting, and minutes must be taken. The statutory requirements for the minutes are not specific, so minutes can be extremely detailed, or they can be more summary oriented. The key to the Sunshine Law, in our opinion, is not to have any discussion with any other member of our board, between you and a member of the board, unless it is during a public meeting. Those meetings include the following items: communications by in person, where you're talking one-on-one or in a group, email, social media, internet blogs, and the like. Memos, mail passing notes, and communications are all constitute meetings under the way the law is crafted in Florida today. Telephone calls, texts between board members would be a meeting if you're discussing a public business. You certainly can call another board member up and say, hey, you want to go to lunch and let's talk about the weather. But the perception there is not good. Our recommendation is that you just do not meet outside of a public meeting with other board members unless publicly noticed. Public has an opportunity and minutes are taken. Sometimes the media or others get involved, and you'll have a communication from a constituent, from a property owner, from a news reporter, and you have to be careful not to allow that person, who would be a liaison, to communicate matters relating to the district back and forth between you and the other board member. Our suggestion is during the meeting not to whisper to one another or to pass notes back and forth. One, for the perception, assuming even it's time for a break, even though that's not a violation, the perception is of concern. When you receive an email with respect to the district, you may see that the emails that we send and that Mr. Classy sends to you say, do not reply, because if there's another board member on it, because you do not want to get into the position of responding, even accidentally, to another board member because it's relating to city business. So be very cautious in your emails when you, if you receive an email that includes in the CC line another board member or board members. If you have any questions or comments about a district's staff member's email to you, reply only to that district staff member, or call that district staff member or Administrator Classy. If you have a question about a matter, please call us at any time. We'll be happy to address that. The problem with violating the Sunshine Law is the penalties are pretty severe. If you knowingly violate the Sunshine Law, you're guilty of a misdemeanor of the 2nd degree, which is punishable by imprisonment up to 60 days or a fine of $500. A suspension upon indictment and removal from office upon conviction. Non-criminal penalties for violations are punishable by a fine up to $500 and reasonable attorney's fees assessed against the violating member. So if you didn't realize there was a violation, it was not an intentional violation, the non-criminal penalty of $500 would apply, but you don't want to get into that in any event. Also, the board's actions with respect to if there's a violation taint the decisions of the board and may void those decisions. So not communicating about matters that are going to come before the board's important, not just for your own personal protection not to do that, but also for the sanctity of the decisions that you make as a board. Briefly, public records, this is quite a bit shorter. Public records are subject to public inspection and proper retention. If you generate, if you write it, you craft it, whether it's on your computer, on your phone, you write notes about it, if you generate or you receive a public record during, as a board member, which relate to the district's business,
Are we still on here? I don't have a signal or anything. I don't know what's going on. Just give me an